Well, good morning and welcome everyone to Live with Strivin. I am joined by some fantastic people this morning. My name is Kelly, Kelly Taglan. I have worked across education and for-purpose organizations for about 18 years. And something I'm really enthusiastic about is combining purpose with technology for fantastic outcomes. Today, I am joined by Yvette, Mark, and Pavi to have a quick conversation about new tech and AI and the effects on recruitment. This is an emerging conversation. I don't think that I've been in a room full of intelligent people in over a year where someone hasn't brought up AI as a topic. And I had the pleasure of recently being at an L&D conference, and the buzz around AI and people, culture, employee experience, all of this, it was just taking over the room. So I'm really pleased to be hosting this conversation today. I'll let the speakers take over from here.
Cool. Hi, I think we're doing a quick intro. So, hi everyone. I am Mark Mansour. I am presently unattached. So, if you're looking for a head of talent, hit me up. But I also run a consultancy called iTalent. So, I work with businesses on their employer brand, on their candidate experience, on their processes, policies, procedures, basically to turn TA from being a dumpster fire into something spectacular. That's me.
Hey everyone, I'm Yvette. I run Salient. We're a recruitment firm that helps tech companies and tech-centered companies to build great product teams, go-to-market teams, and post-sales teams. Looking forward to chatting.
Awesome. Hey everyone, my name's Pavi. I am head of people and talent at Mindset Health. So we basically have hypnotherapy apps to help people with conditions such as IBS, menopause, and to help them quit smoking by unlocking the power of their mind. So everything that we're talking about today in terms of AI also flows on from who we are as people, but also embracing technology as well.
What an all-star panel. I feel so fortunate to be here today with you. And before we launch in, I will just acknowledge the land on which I am joining you from today, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I want to pay respects to all traditional landowners from past, present, and emerging. And I would like to welcome and acknowledge all people joining us today on traditional lands from which they join us. And without further ado, I might launch right into it. So, Pavi, I'm going to throw you the first opportunity to answer a question.
Sure.
How are you currently using AI within your teams? And this could be broadly department-wide, organization-wide, but why don't you just share with us where that's at with Mindset Health?
Yeah, sure. Might overlap quite a fair bit with, I think, what other people are using it for as well. So in terms of what I personally use it for, writing PD drafts, writing up job advert drafts. I've coached a few people who have wanted to write up cover letters and they're not eloquent enough. So, taking out your LinkedIn profile and actually putting it into things like ChatGPT and saying, help me write a cover letter for XYZ job. Writing up Boolean strings. I'm not the strongest person with writing up Boolean strings when I'm sourcing. So I've used a lot of ChatGPT for that as well. But on the flip side of it, outside of recruitment, just being able to summarize large volumes of text. I know that there's a few people who are either dyslexic or have difficulty like just absorbing large amounts of text, or they get apprehensive reading books. So using that to summarize it down. So there's been a few cases of like being able to use AI to condense down information as well, but it's really dependent on like what you're looking for. But these are the areas that I've kind of used it in the last 6 to 8 months as well.
Pavi, I love the idea that you brought to life there around inclusivity. The way that we can use AI to support people that are, neurodiverse or that learn differently. That really resonates with me. And over to you, Yvette. How are you using AI at Salient at the moment?
Yeah, I think a couple of ways. Primarily, I think the team are using obviously ChatGPT to do more research-based tasks such as building market maps and researching competitor sets and all the rest of it for our clients. The second way I would say is more on content. So we leverage a platform called the Martech, which is an AI-driven content marketing platform for the employer branding function. And we use this to support our clients to create video and written content at scale that really enables a much more personalized talent journey, whether that be through interacting with job ads, whether that be, interacting with content from influential employees, or, getting preparation from us to help them prepare for interviews and all the rest of it. So, yeah, really leveraging that, which I think is going to lead to a really interesting evolution, in my view, which is that, the recruiter job as a whole is going to become much more multidisciplinary and much more focused in that area of content marketing and employer branding. So
it's so interesting that you talk about personalization. I think that this is one of the things that across industries, AI just can basically become your super powerhouse, right? That's really fascinating. And I actually think I should look at this tool that you're using. That's fantastic. Mark, would you build on anything there? What are you doing at the moment?
I was going to say I'll keep it short. Yeah, same as everyone else. Really, a lot of this is a lot of how I'm using AI at the moment is to take tasks that usually take forever, we procrastinate about, and to get something created super quick. In the wonderful world of talent acquisition, automation is super important, and we generally have really ugly, clunky systems. And the work that we do is very manually driven. So having something where you can throw a prompt out and go, okay, I'm looking, here's an old position description. I want to make it nice and sexy, and putting a prompt out there and getting it rehashed, and then running that past, your stakeholders and saying, hey, this is something that we've sort of put together. What else? What else can we add? Right? Make life a whole heap easier. And it really means that we're able to have much more of an interface with our stakeholders, and worry about the more higher level, more important tasks that we need to run through.
That's fantastic. Look, I think for efficiency and for removing writer's block, or for just getting started on a creative task, you can absolutely use AI as a bit of a shortcut to launch you into where you need to be. That's lovely. I really like that.
It's phenomenal, right? I think what you see is all of us are using it in our personal lives as well, right? Something like ChatGPT or Bard or any of them, they're only as good as the prompts that you're using. So I wanted to write a book for my daughter, and I've got, all right, I started prompting ChatGPT, and then I've got this awesome book with it's all about her, all about my daughter, and I'm like, all right, this is great.
Wow.
Now I've got to go through and get that printed out and get artists, and I'm like, all right, how can I use generative AI to create the images, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find, so there's some really cool stuff that you can do. So we look at it from a TA lens, but just from, if you look at cinematography, if you look at creating movies, if you look at, creating content, book, everything's going to change, right?
And the more you play, the more you learn, right, Mark?
Yeah.
So it's a way of getting comfortable with the tools. I might throw a fresh question out there. We're talking about the benefits and some of the cool things that we're doing with either experimentation or applying, efficiencies across our businesses. Javi, what are you seeing as maybe the risks or the lookouts, the pitfalls of using this emerging technology in the workplace?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones that everyone's talking about and that's come to life is the bias that's being created by using AI tools as well. I think there was some really cool, visuals that Bloomberg had come out with recently as well about, people putting in things like, prompting it to say, hey, I want to generate a AI picture of a CEO, and it all just came out with just whitewashed men as pictures. So in terms of the bias, obviously it's picking up on the bias that we still currently have in society. So that's one of the biggest drawbacks, is because it's still quite new. AI is still new. It's being built by humans. It had to start from somewhere. So it's obviously picking up on what our current community and, the environmental biases that are around us. So for it to evolve from there, it's still going to take quite a few years. But for people that are just pushing in things into AI and then using it as is without sort of going over it to double check things, I think that's where one of the biggest drawbacks is, that, for people that are just using AI just to as is without using it as a draft, or even when we put in
Mm,
PDs and, when we're prompting it, the way that you prompt also makes a difference. Like to what Mark said before, the prompts that you're using make a really big difference. So
mm,
if we're putting in there just as is, just typing questions going, hey, create this PD for me, it is going to be biased in a lot of those senses. There's not going to be gender neutrality. The things that we're working really hard to fight against now, and using other technology like your Textios to make sure that the language is gender neutral or not biased towards one, ethnicity or another, or the way that it's seen, all of that using AI, I think we just need to be very conscious about. It is a tool, and
mm.
it is a tool that was built by humans. So until it gets to a point where we can fully rely on it, we're not at a stage where we can do that right now.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Yvette, would you build on anything there?
Yeah, I think it's. I think the really big one for me is authenticity, particularly when it comes to things like, as recruiters, there's a lot of personalized outreach and, content creation for recruitment marketing. I think and the key is how you use the tool, as opposed to, I think the risk is, if you unleash it across the masses and everyone starts creating content at scale and personalizing outreach, what's real and what's not. And I think right now it's at the point where, say, for example, LinkedIn in-mails, they have got an AI tool now where they'll drag in information about that profile and say, hey, here you go, personalize it. And if you read it as it presents it, it's quite tinny and
Mm,
inauthentic. But I think it's the key is, how do you use the data and the insights that the AI tool provides to then stimulate something that's authentic and build on that and finished product. But I think the risk is, how people use it, whether they use it as that source, and then, figuring out what's real and what's not. I think that's going to be a
yeah,
challenge.
it's incredible. And Mark, how about you from your side? You're a big fan of AI, but what are the pitfalls? What should we really be kind of keeping an eye out for, and how can we form best practice around the use of AI?
The flashing light is probably what I'd say. Right, it's this new tech, right? It's new-ish, right? And everyone wants to play with it and use it in some way, shape, or form. But are you playing with it and forgetting about your basic? Right. One thing I always talk about is get your recruitment 101s right. And everyone gets excited, like, oh, yeah, we can use ChatGPT or we can automate to do this. Well, hold on. Your careers website sucks. Your interviews sucks. Your manager don't know how to speak to candidates. You treat your candidates like crap. All these things that are fundamental that you need to focus on haven't been done. So why aren't you looking at those first, instead of trying to get another tool added to the pile, right? So I think before we get excited, we need to go back to basics, simplify things. What are our highest priorities? Ensure that we've got stakeholder buy-in from it and support from executive leadership teams, and then we're able to move forward. Because I firmly believe, and this has been a topic of conversation for the last 10 years that I've been working in internal,
Mm,
leaders still aren't buying into TA, right? They don't know. The vast majority of them don't know what to do. And are we putting ourselves in a position where we're not engaging enough with the leadership teams to understand what we're actually doing? We're spinning a million plates at any given point in time, right? And
mm.
we've got to be
And
everything to everyone. So TA is not easy. It's not rocket science, but it's not easy. But this is one more thing that's shiny that we look at, and it's a tool we should be trying to take advantage of. But there's a whole heap of other stuff that we need to do and get right also.
I
So
think the lesson
another
there
spinning plate.
of looking out and covering your basics and using AI to enhance what you're already doing really well is really important. If you're using a tool like AI to perhaps like fill in gaps or make up for deficiencies or lack of capability in your team, you're crossing into a scary area. One of the favorite things I've read about AI is ChatGPT in particular. It's like an unreliable um, intern that lies. So basically, you could get some really nice entry level work, but you really do need to check the accuracy of it,
Yeah.
and don't take it as your be all end all. I might throw another new question out, but how are you planning to use AI in the next year or two? And what are the real opportunities that you're identifying in this space? I might start with you again, Pavi.
I think in the next few years, it also depends on how evolved these tools get as well. I've seen some that are already making big headways, like things like I think MetaView was one of them that I came across recently, where they record all of the, or they transcribe interviews that are happening. So for hiring managers that are not there, or we want to move really quickly with a candidate, you can just send them the transcription. And if it's something that's like really long, or if you're pinpointing something, you can actually search through it and say, show me the answer to this question specifically, and it will actually pull it out. So things like that will obviously get to a point where we can use tools in that sense. But for me personally, I think in terms of brainstorming ideas, like Yvette mentioned earlier, a lot of it is not, relying on AI to do your whole work for you, but it's looking at how our roles will evolve so that we can be more of the value add, we can be more of the human touch. Just because we've got an extra tool in there, it doesn't mean we just rely on it and we just forget our base roles to begin with, but it's using the tool as an addition on top of it so that we can get all the administrative tasks out of the way. If we are pulling out, especially in speaking me personally and other people that I know that work in startups, sometimes you don't have the time, you don't have the resources of a team of 5 or a team of 6 TA. It is you doing everything. So if we have to do sourcing on one end, building pipelines on the other end, doing outreach campaigns, doing the interviewing and the phone screening, and then getting into the stakeholder side of things, there's a lot of pieces of that puzzle that as a sole person doing all of those roles that you can leverage on AI to actually get rid of a lot of those administrative tasks for you and being able to be more efficient in that role. But on the other flip side of it, how can we be more of the human side of things on the other end, like focus on the phone screens, focus on the interviewing, focus on upskilling our teams to do those pieces better, but utilize a tool to help that faster. It's not things that we've not come across before. Like we've evolved from going through collecting CVs or sending CVs from fax machines into desktops where everything wasn't, we were stuck to a desk because you couldn't take your computer. And now we've gone from laptops into all of your emails are on a phone. So it's just evolving with the technology. Like, how do we utilize it in the future to do things more efficient and faster?
Yeah, I love that. I think that, to counter that with the AI, robotics are taking our jobs. They're not. They're enhancing our ability to do our job better. And those of us that are involved in any kind of human to human or any job that requires empathy or high levels of creativity, that's really where we should be focused. That's right. That's right. Yvette, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that we've got a predefined plan in terms of how we plan to leverage AI, and I think it's a real evolving beast. But I guess one of the promises that I'll want to make to my team and is around, say for example, if AI does automate some of those really time-consuming, repetitive tasks that might be, quite high volume, as recruitment often is, that then it frees you up a certain amount of capacity in your day. And I think there's a risk, I think, whether it be in corporate or an agency environment, that, from a leadership perspective, is to say then, okay, more output, right? Fill more jobs, create more revenue, etc. So I think what is going to be important from a leadership perspective is ensuring that, provide that opportunity that AI has created to allow people to evolve in their roles and become more multidisciplinary, whether that be becoming a custodian of candidate experience, whether that be strategic initiatives focused on talent pooling and workforce planning, whether that means, more employer branding. I think just really, really important that we enable people to evolve, because I think the role of the recruiter has a lot of scope to become so much bigger than what it currently is. And I think it's really important that we leverage AI to, provide the scope to do that.
Love that. And Mark, would you quickly wrap us up with sort of what you're planning on using AI for? I think you're sort of like one of these early adopters, one of these people that's, real-time teaching and using AI at the same time.
Yeah, I like to think so too. But you never like I love tinkering, right? My last role was over at Capgemini, and I was fortunate I had a regional leadership role. And one of the things that I started tinkering with over there was metaverse, and I was looking at that from an onboarding perspective. So, what the team had done, there was a global team that went out, spent a heap of cash, and invested in creating a recruitment type experience in the metaverse, and they had people globally. So it was a global open day for Capgemini, and it was cool. It was different. And what I was looking at doing is taking it and using it for our region, for our global business unit, to have everyone onboarding through the same platform at a certain time that works for everyone else. But if you've got a regional team, your constraints are obviously time. Someone's 8 o'clock is someone else's 1 a.m. Right? So
That's so
we've been
forward-thinking.
that, but it was so like the concept. And this is what I was saying, the flashing lights, right? You look at it and you go, oh, that concept, doing it in the metaverse, right? Everyone's working remotely, but you can sort of all be together in some way, shape, or form. And that, in theory, sounds phenomenal. But then you go, cost, time zones, pain in the ass, right?
Yeah.
Bin it. So,
But it sounds
it's
like it was a
trying to
great
identify
platform
that.
to start experimenting and thinking about employee
Mm.
experience and how you can sort of lean into new and emerging technologies and actually experiment with those things in real time before just kind of writing it off as expensive or too hard, right? And I think that the
Yeah.
organizations that are willing to sort of put themselves forward, make the investment in the innovation, and speak to the value of trial and celebrating failure, I think that that they will reap the rewards. So I might just
Just a
this.
quick one.
Mhm.
One of the big things I always want to get back to this is cost, right? We get really excited with all these funky new tools that come out, but they cost an arm and a leg, right? And that's a tough thing. So having something like ChatGPT, which for the moment is free, unless you want to go 4.0, then you're paying. That's great for us to try and take advantage of. The second these tools become paid tools, and then you start having to pay enterprise licensing costs, we're going to be up the duff. And there's still other conversations that need to be had about getting additional funding for TA. So it's great to talk about AI and hey, there's all these new stuff coming out, but our ceiling, right? Our glass ceiling for talent acquisition is budget and support and people understanding what we do. And I always want to go back and highlight that because we get excited, right? Flashing lights, yes, right? You got duk music here, but it's like I'm still trying to work and get stuff done, and we have to bring that back. So there's still that conversation that needs to be had. That now's not
Return on
the time, but
investment.
I always want to bring that up.
Return on investment, being able to calculate and develop value, and also considering total cost of ownership. This is something I've been learning about very recently, is that getting a new shiny tool in is all well and good, but making sure that we're considering the ecosystem effect on integrating something new and shiny, and making sure that we're not leaving the bigger picture out. Training, the implications on people's time for learning and development. And that leads me actually to my next question. What are the workforce considerations in terms of education, change, and evolution of roles? This is a real key area, something near and dear to my heart. Javi, do you have anything to say around education, change, upskilling?
Yeah, I think as a general rule, like talent acquisition doesn't really have a lot of upskilling. Like there are pockets and bits and pieces, but usually when you do talk to other people in TA, it's when you do ask them the question, how did you get into TA? A lot of them are like, me included, we just fell into it, right? There's not a course, there's not a certification that you have to go through to go into TA. So I think we're already kind of on the back burner here in terms of the talent acquisition industry as a whole, in terms of having a space for upskilling. We don't have a lot of that infrastructure there. It is learning off whoever's been in your team. If you have a really good manager, they train you up, they train you with the right way or the right skill set, then yes, you're set up for success. But if you're learning off, and we've all had them, if you're learning off poor managers or poor leaders, then you're picking up poor skill sets as well. So I think even with this, in terms of AI, I know that some of the universities are also incorporating AI and coding and things like that into other degrees like commerce and business, or having an understanding of sustainability and growing that space in the future. But I don't think we have a lot of space, or we don't see a lot of those things like hands-on training to understand evolving tech. Like people who are in it and know it, they're there, but the infrastructure I don't think is completely there yet for us to say, hey, look, in 6 months' time, let's send our teams to AI training. It's not there yet, and that's something that is a bit of a pitfall, because everything right now is learning from other people, or learning to see what's coming out of the big companies. Going back to what Mark was saying before, you need the infrastructure. I know recently Roblox came out with their whole recruitment, and their careers center is set into Roblox, but that's because Roblox as an infrastructure, as a game, is already set up. They've got the infrastructure, they've got the people working in, they've got the consumers, they've got the candidates already coming in. So for them, it is very easy to run a careers event or careers center within the game itself, and that's their whole hiring process is now within Roblox. So I don't know if anyone's seen that, but it is, they're already there. They've got the infrastructure there. It's easy for them to train, because they don't have to learn a new system. All of their employees and their users are familiar with the systems, with the processes. So it was quite easy for them to sort of slip it in and go, great, this is something new. And they've been able to pull it up really quickly, because they don't need to worry about building it from scratch, or worrying if their candidates, like if we start something tomorrow and we put it in the metaverse, or if we do a careers event in the metaverse, who's going to get in there? Who has the Oculuses, and how do we make that inclusive? Going back to inclusivity, how do we make sure that we have a diverse range of people applying for it? We will all have those issues until we build the infrastructure to get that up and running quickly. But yeah, that's one of I think the big things in terms of education. Right now, there isn't any formal education. It's just picking things up as we go and learning something that's evolving.
Working in the education future skills space myself, I agree with you, Pavi. AI in particular, I think we're seeing an emergence of informal learning, and beyond kind of the building of tools. There's the training out there is sparse, and quality really ranges. So yeah, is that what from your perspective are the key kind of workforce considerations coming from a salient point of view?
Yeah, I think again, I'm sort of banging on about that same point, but it's kind of, I think there's going to be that real aspect of time saving and efficiency that is brought through AI, and then I think on a per tool basis, there will be a lot of good training that comes out, and a per function basis as well. Right now, I agree with Pavi. I think a lot of the training in AI is very technically oriented and really kind of geared towards engineering and people wanting to upskill from a technical perspective. But I think there's real opportunity to functional perspective to, and I think it will emerge quite rapidly, a lot of, positive training that will come out. So I think it's going to be about ensuring that your team's got access to that, having a culture that is, not fearful of those developments, and creating a culture of safety around new technology, and parameters with which people can use them. And I think it'll all be built on, provided you've got that sort of mentality internally. But yeah, I think it's very much an evolving piece in terms of the training so far.
Yeah, love that. And Mark, it might be kind of leaning on some of your experience back when you were with Capgemini, or just your philosophy in general. But what would you say are the keys, or the key moments to capture if you're looking at, employee upskilling considerations and so on?
Yeah, I think it's what you've just asked specifically. It's let people tinker with things, see where they can, what allows them to automate, what allows them to fast track things, but keep an eye on what it is that actually needs to be accomplished, right? I know that just feels like a bunch of words that came out, right? But it's hard. Like, we all want to tinker with things. With what Pavi said, falling into recruitment, we've sort of picked things up and run with it, and we're continually learning. And if you're a technologist, if you're not continually reading up on what's occurring or what's new, what's latest and greatest, you're going to fall behind the eight ball. So the knowledge, if there are technologists that are in here, keep studying, keep reading up on what's coming out, keep tinkering with all the latest tech, with the latest in AI, because it's being used in a whole heap of different ways. From networking, actually going through, trying to identify if there's intrusion detection, if there's patterns of behavior that are being changed. We're seeing banking environments implementing it for fraud detection, right? There's a lot of different ways that AI is being utilized. We haven't talked about using it from an insights perspective. We haven't talked about the Excel. One of my favorite things, I suck at Excel, is how they've got the ChatGPT plugin, and you can actually go through and write, I want to connect this column with this column, and you sync it, and you can it's stuff like that that's happening, which is so cool. There's so much out there, but assess, what are you trying to do? How do you think this is going to help you? Give yourself a window to tinker with it. Don't do it in a live environment, right? And if it works, if you can do something cool, if you can do things faster, great, no worries. There's a mechanism, but don't get distracted, right? There's a lot of opportunity to F up, and we don't want to do that. But you still have to keep tinkering, otherwise nothing's going to change.
That's great, Mark. That was a fantastic note to end on. Sadly, we're coming to the end of our time, but I might just ask one quick question. Looking at the next horizon, what's the tool or what's the thing in AI crossed with people talent that you are recommending that people look out for? I know I'm kind of putting people on the spot, so I'll take up a couple more seconds of time by saying my favorite one. I know that quite a few people are using a couple of different generative AI solutions to get through their cover letter generation and answer like really sticky questions through the application process, just unblocking those creativity blocks so that they kind of push through. And when we talk about inclusivity, when we talk about diversity, if we can help somebody who is not a natural creative writer, this is a way that we can kind of help them get through those heavy application processes. All right, Pavi?
Gosh, I was still thinking because there was a few that you mentioned that are quite useful, like the interview hiring one that I mentioned earlier, MetaView. That's also been quite useful because I can see things that we can actually plug into it, especially when we're working in a remote space as well, being able to cross time zones, and instead of having to wait to give hiring managers access to videos, and sometimes some of these interviews are an hour and a half long, being able to give them a transcription instead and go, great, have a look at this, or summarize this interview for me and give me the main points or the main takeaways from it. For those that are time poor, that makes a big difference as well. But also another one that we've been tinkering with has been the People GPT. I know a few people have heard of it and have played with it as well, but being able to source candidates as well using People GPT and putting in prompts in there, but specific prompts as, you're identifying someone who's moved from a BA role into a project manager role in the last 2 years, like being very specific and actually coming up with profiles that search through. So those two are probably the ones that I'm sort of most keen on playing with at the moment as well.
Key to generative AI success is good prompts get you better results. Very good. Yvette, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tools that really enable that personalization of the talent journey at all the different touch points. I think that's going to be the really big growth area.
Love that. And Mark, we'll finish with you. 10 seconds on the next horizon. What do you think is key for people to take away as something to look out for?
I think it hasn't been created yet, not that I'm aware of, but any tool that blasts DEI out the water. And what I mean is there's a human element for DEI that we all interpret, and it's seen by the vast majority as gender. And it isn't, right? It isn't just gender. diversity of thought is one thing that appears to be lacking a fair amount from what I've seen in recent times. You're seeing people hiring along political lines and ideologies these days, more so than, different thought, healthy debate amongst humans. That doesn't it's not occurring, and that's. I love that. I love people who think the exact opposite of me, and then we can have a conversation. Go, shit, all right, we're on the same. I understand how you're thinking. How can we work together to understand different patterns? Anything that actually comes out and shows that different thoughts work together extremely well, regardless of race, creed, sex, biology, gender, any of that stuff, like that is going to be phenomenal, because diversity of thought, that is the most important. But I haven't seen anything that's coming out. It's showing something. It's
Love it.
showing archetypes, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
of a system, but it's not thought, and that thought is the most important, right?
Yeah.
How we interpret
Diverse
information,
teams
how
make
we work.
robust teams. Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Mark, I love that. I think that was a fantastic high to finish on. I just want to thank everybody who joined us today for the live. And I want to thank our amazing panel, Yvette, Pavi, and Mark. I learned a lot, and I think that there were some amazing takeaways. I think thinking about personalizing the candidate journey, really creating a culture around innovation and experimentation, and also being mindful of your ROI, your total cost of ownership, and the implications around upskilling, and the impact on our teams that we are working with, not just the ones that we're recruiting for, is a really fantastic takeaway. I want to thank the team at Strivin for putting this together, and thanks everyone for giving us an extra 6 minutes and 22 seconds. I think we just had a lot to fit in a very small bubble. So thanks everyone who's hung on through the end there with us. And with that, we'll close up. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
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 Bye.